的运用。Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到原力区直播间，我是本次活动的主持人武荣，欢迎大家继续跟随我们探索 Web 3.0。本期的Web 3.0先行活动呢，也是216期原力开放日，是我们春节假期后的第一场活动。那相信很多小伙伴们还沉浸在这个过年的气氛当中，不知道大家的状态调整的如何了？那希望今天呢，我们原力开放日也可以陪伴大家从前面的这种假期生活，然后回到活力满满的满血复活的状态，迎接新的工作和生活。Web3 先行者的系列活动主要是面向不同的公链，邀约行业资深大咖进行分享和交流。在我们之前的活动中呢，有知名的公链，还有依托于不同链的明星生态项目。那接下来我们也会一直走下去，希望可以和大家共同携手，一起共享 Web3 生态繁荣。Hello everyone, I'm Dolores. This is our fourth open day of both Web3 community. We are a non-profit community, and now we are having a series of Web3 projects featured on our community. There are not only public chains projects here, but also ecological developers and builders relying on different chains. So we welcome everyone to speak out through our platform and promote the development of Web3 together. 那本场的活动呢，我们特别邀请到区块链在线教育平台 Web3 University 的创始人 Deric 作为演讲嘉宾，分享关于与道一起创造教育未来。那 Web3 University 是一个在线的区块链教育平台，为想要学习构建 Web3 的开发者和建设者提供区块链生态系统的学习资源和教程，使大家可以快速便捷的然后获得整个 Web3 中有价值的资源。那 Web3 University 它也是涵盖了 Web3 开发的所有的基础知识，从编写语言到铸造 NFT， 再到构建全站的 DApp 等等。那目前也是与业内重量级的项目均有合作，比如说 H6Z、Off-Chain Labs、Polygon、OpenSea 还有 Build Spaces 等等啊。那同时呢 Web3 University 也正在积极的探索将他们的这个管理权交到社区，提出基于区块链技术，然后建立一个叫做 Education DAO， 使任何有投票权的人都可以参与和激励创造更有价值和有用的内容，然后整个就是整合整个互联网上有价值的资源，然后进行一个学习和构建 Web3 的开发。In the 216th events of the fourth open day, Deric Cheng, founder at Web3 University, is here to share a topic about building the future of education with DAOs. Web3 University is an online education platform bringing you the best resources across the blockchain development ecosystem. Basically, they are bringing the best of the best together to ensure you are getting the most valuable resources across all of the Web3. Meanwhile, Web3 University are actively exploring what it would look like to decentralize the management of Web3 University in the long run and give ownership to the community. In these events, they will discuss the pros and cons of building a DAO. If you have been wondering what the education DAO does, or if build a DAO is the right choice, Deric will share all this in the video and more details about the Web3 University team. 那在本次的活动中呢 ，Deric 在视频中会为我们介绍 Education DAO 和Web3 University， 并分享DAO在未来的教育领域所扮演的一个角色啊。那好的，就让我们看看嘉宾 Deric 的视频，然后开始Deric 的精彩分享。
Hey, how's it going? I'm Deric Cheng. I'm one of the founders of Web3 University, and I'm a developer advocate at Alchemy. I'm here today to talk to you guys about the confluence of two really fascinating spaces that we've been exploring in the past year and that we're excited to explore with you: education and crypto. And more importantly, we're excited to look into what online education is going to be doing in the next 5 years or so, and how we might be able to shape it using the tools given to us by Web3. So, first, some background about me. I've been building in Web3 for about 3 years now. I started at Alchemy about 2 years ago. Prior to this, I was at Google working at a rapid software prototyping role, working on next generation hardware. So tools like Google Glass or the Google Pixel Buds were my projects. For example, I was doing some augmented reality research for Google Glass, and I was one of the primary developers behind the first real-time translation earbuds released on Google. Essentially, for instance, it allows you to speak in English on one earbud and have another person listen to your translated voice in Spanish, so more real-time translation between parties of different languages. But since then, I've moved into the crypto space, and it's been a pretty fantastic journey for me. So I'm excited to share what I've been learning and share what I've been thinking about, more importantly. So the big question, I think, in Web3 these days is, what does Web3 need to grow and to move forward? Over the past year, I've talked to about 60 companies in Web3 as part of my roles working in developer advocacy, as part of my roles launching Web3 University. And every single company I've talked to has made probably the same 2 points. The things that they think that are the most important for their success are, 1, building more Web3 literacy around the world, and then 2, making more builders enter Web3 to help create these tools and make Web3 work. I think all of these companies recognize that most of the green field is still ahead. The vast majority of the world still hasn't found Web3 yet, and the most important thing we can do for the growth of all these projects and all these companies is to grow the entire Web3 space as a whole. And so a lot of us has independently arrived at this conclusion, which is essentially that we think education is really the most valuable thing that we can be doing for Web3 today. And fundamentally, education is one of those things that ties all of us together, right? We all know what it's like to learn from a really strong teacher. We all know teachers who have really influenced us, but we also know that this is one of those things that we're lacking the most in Web3 development right now. We don't have strong learning courses. We don't have a lot of resources available. It's pretty scattered. And really the question is, why is that? What's the problem here? Well, particularly in Web3 developer education, there's a lot of real problems that we face. For one, it's a rapidly growing space. There's a statistic out there that says 48% of Web3 developers started just last year in 2021, which basically means 1 out of every 2 developers that you meet is going to be under a year old. And so there's not a lot of experience in the space. And fundamentally, it's really complicated. The basics of Web3 are built on totally foreign concepts to most people, and it takes a decent amount of overhead to get ramped up. Things like tokens, blockchains, hashes. It's not easy to learn about all this stuff. And not only is it complicated, but it's also very fragmented, which means that there's not just one project or one way of doing things. There's literally dozens of different chains, there's different projects, and there's different networks that can confuse and overwhelm new learners. So it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. And more importantly, most of this stuff is happening online. It's not happening in traditional academia because there's not enough people in traditional academia who understand blockchain to be able to teach courses about it yet. So really what we want to do with Web3 University is to create this massive thing that we think we're missing, which is a free online educational platform for Web3 development to help unify and to tie together a lot of the most valuable resources across the entire internet for learning Web3 development. And this is coming from a team of us at Alchemy, along with a number of independent developers from across the ecosystem who are getting together to build what we see as the next logical step. How we're planning on doing this is we're planning on consolidating the best articles, we're consolidating the best videos, and we're looking to teach people a single streamlined vision, so a single stack for how you approach and learn Web3 to make it as simple and clean as possible. And so we're covering all of the basic topics when it comes to developing Web3, things like how to use Solidity, how to use smart contracts, NFTs, DAOs, DeFi, but we're taking the most simple approach and the most intuitive structure so that people can jump into any of these topics that they're really excited about and still be learning things from scratch as quickly as possible. And just to go into a little bit of what we have today, this website exists. It's at Web3 University, and we've developed a really solid following already. Just in the past month or so, we've picked up about 10K Twitter followers. We have a few thousand people on the Discord, and we've probably got about 10 external builders currently working on or exploring creating content for the platform. And really importantly, we've partnered with a lot of the big players in the Web3 space to give attention and to help us curate really fantastic content covering all different types of topics, so we're as unbiased and neutral and widespread as possible into all of the entry points into Web3. So we've been working with Andreessen Horowitz, we've been working with Polygon, Flow, Optimism, Arbitrum to cover different types of chains. We're working with OpenSea to look into NFTs, and ChainShot and BuildSpace, who are really great developer education platforms that are already out there. And we're trying to find ways to tie together all the information across all of these platforms. Here's another example. This is more of our front page, and you can see that we're bringing in content from pretty well-known developer advocates such as Patrick Collins, Nader Dabit, Austin Griffith, but we also have streamlined tracks that allow you to learn and quickly pick up the basics of smart contracts or the basics of developing in blockchain without having to learn anything else in the background. You can just jump right in and get started. So hopefully that puts you in the right direction. But taking a big step back, just building this platform isn't the only thing that we're trying to solve, and there's a lot more in free online education that needs to be overhauled before we can get to really where we want to be. And in order to get into that, I think we need to talk a little bit more about what free online education entails. I think a lot of us don't really think about what free online education is because we do it so naturally and we do it all the time that we don't even think of it as education. And what really people do when they're learning about Web3 these days is you pick a search term and you start Googling it, and you start reading the results. And so the knowledge is just filtered through Google or through these search algorithms. And it's the fastest and the quickest way to pick up information about a new topic, right? And those articles, the videos, the lessons that you run across, we think that these are going to be the way that all of our children are going to be learning most of their knowledge 20 years from now. Currently, things are still really structured within the paradigm of traditional academia or the paradigm of courses. But more and more, we find that the more new topics people learn, the more and more they get reliant on these more efficient and effective methods of picking up a lot of information really quickly without the constraints of traditional courses. And so it really is probably the most rapidly growing educational space available today. But there's a lot of issues related to free online education, and we can get into some of these in detail. I think one of the biggest issues is that the search results that you get on average when you're looking for knowledge, no matter what you type in related to Web3, the search results are pretty abysmal. And the question is, why is that? Really, it comes down to one thing. The main issue is that search results are driven primarily by algorithms, not people. So what Google is doing is Google is trying to emulate what a really intelligent, thoughtful person would show you when you ask, what is the difference between L1s or L2s? Or how do I use a blockchain? Unfortunately, Google is a pretty poor replacement for a person because it doesn't really understand the deep intent behind an article. It doesn't understand the quality of the article. It doesn't understand what type of value it provides. So it has to use these very, very rough indicators, such as how often you mention a keyword, whether you put it in the title, or how many backlinks point to a particular article. And unfortunately, these metrics that Google use don't always correspond to the key metric, which is this article going to be really useful for me, and is it going to be good at teaching me about my search query? As a result, it's really difficult to find super useful, super well-written content. It forces you to have to trawl through dozens of average articles. There's a lot of chaff in the system, and it's also very easy to game the system because there's a lot of ways to hack up your SEO search rankings and to make your article show up earlier and earlier in the search results without improving necessarily the quality or improving the content that it delivers to the reader. So a lot is broken really when it comes to the free online content that you're looking at every single day when you search on Google. And what's worse is that it's even worse for the educators who are really excited and interested in creating that online content. Because unlike writers who are creating academic papers or writers who are teaching a class, there's basically no upside for people who are teaching other people online for free. When you're making articles, it doesn't really boost your reputation in any substantial domain. It doesn't really give you money other than ads. And so there's not a lot of reputational payoff. There's not a lot of financial upside. And as a result, the best educators tend to avoid spending a lot of time just creating online articles for free that teach people about certain areas like Web3 development or even Web2 development. It just doesn't pay off very well for them. So to recap some of these issues and to illustrate the output and the outcomes of these issues, we can look at a few things. Firstly, we see that mostly the content that's created online and that's being surfaced whenever you search for a particular query that you want to learn about, most of that content is driven by companies. And those companies have a financial incentive to acquire domain authority for their platform, for their website, and not solely to produce great content. Most writers need to work with companies like this in order to get paid for their work. And so most of the content is being generated by writers creating content for those companies. Most of the great teachers who end up in the space don't continue to have a good reason to create the free content online. And so they tend to move into other domains that are more profitable. For instance, they'll move into academia, or they'll move into organized courses. And finally, even if a writer does create a really amazing piece, it's really, really hard for it to get discovered because of all the SEO hoops that they have to jump through. Unless they happen to also be an SEO wizard, it can take months, or it can even take years for it to generate traction. And then articles that happen to be on non-established websites, for instance, a personal website, they might never get attention because they might never be surfaced enough by Google in order to generate the types of backlinks or the types of traction that will allow it to show up at the top of the rankings. And so it's pretty hard to get people to see your content unless you know what you're doing. One second. So the question is, how can Web3 change this paradigm? How can we use Web3 to create something that empowers writers, empowers readers, and most importantly, empowers people, not just companies or algorithms? One of the first things that we can look to, as we all have recognized, are probably decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. And really, I understand that most of you probably have experience with DAOs or have seen them in some way, but we can really dive down into the structure. In particular, DAOs exist to solve the principal agent dilemma. And what does that mean? That means when an agent or an actor or a participant in an organization has interests that are different than those of the organization, there tends to be conflict and there tends to be misalignment of interests. One very obvious example, Elizabeth Holmes, who was the CEO of Theranos, lied to his stakeholders about the efficacy of her blood test results, and that eventually led to the dissolution of the company. Personally, to keep the charade going. So as an agent, she had a lot of incentives to continue lying to investors. And so she acted in her own best interests, covering up what her test machines didn't do. And therefore leaving her customers with breakdown between leadership and the purpose of an organization is really what DAOs are seeking to avoid. They're looking to avoid coding leadership and power structures into code run on the blockchain because they want to guarantee the ownership of the organization is isolated from any particular individual. One way to look at this is, instead having a single or a small group of people at the top, most of the fundamental decisions of a DAO are made by consensus across participating in proposals. They're voting on them, and the proposals are passing based on at the top. And so the hierarchy of one of these DAOs is limited to the hierarchy required to make the DAO function effectively and efficiently, as opposed to things like past pedigree or financial investments or length of time spent with the DAO. So it really cuts out a lot of middle management and focuses individuals not on leadership, but more on execution of the goals and the values of a DAO. And so, most importantly, these DAOs are allowing organizations to grow and function really without a couple of things, without a strong leader or a strong leadership system, and then also without a clear profit motive, because most of the projects that you typically see that get a lot of backing tend to have a lot of funding. And so DAOs are really used for situations where a lot of people have common interests and are willing to work together towards those interests, even without direct clear financial incentives such as working for a company. And so things like music or art, or in this case, education, really fit well into the business value of a DAO. They're also really useful for helping us use these token-based incentive systems that are tied into the fabric of crypto. We can leverage a lot of exciting tools that can actually provide people very useful incentives that we can discuss a little bit more in the future. And then finally, these DAOs have a ton of potential to solve a lot of the fundamental issues we're seeing around search algorithms, because we can allow communities and groups of people to determine the value in articles or in content. Hopefully we can use this to curate and surface the most useful information for readers without relying on systems created by large Web2 companies that have been around for 10 or 20 years that have a deeply vested financial interest in maintaining the existing model for how you search and how you learn about things. So let's talk a little bit about the incentive structures. One token-based incentive system that we've already seen coming up quite often, NFT membership systems. You might have seen these in communities such as Bored Apes, for example. And what that basically means is that you own an NFT, and that corresponds to membership in a particular organization. And so this kind of structure can allow for DAOs to have decentralized membership structures, where there's not a single admin centralization of power. That's really valuable because then once you've distributed these NFT organizations fairly, where the power will actually be spread out across everybody who owns an NFT, and they'll be encoded by code into this fabric of the NFT. And perhaps more importantly, one of the cool things about DAOs and NFTs is that when you build value in the DAO, when you grow a DAO, you inherently build value in the associated NFTs related to it. People start to want those NFTs more, and they'll start to pay more for those NFTs. So it allows individual members. And finally, there's even benefits for the DAO itself when it comes to the financials around NFTs. For instance, initially selling off the NFTs can raise some money for the treasury. Secondary transfer fees from one individual to another, from the minting of an NFT and the transferring of the NFT, all of that can be used for the baseline funds of a DAO. Another example of a really useful incentive system is fungible tokens, and this we've seen quite often in the DAO space. This is really popular, and a lot of DAOs across the entire ecosystem use this for governance. So fungible tokens are kind of this tokens that you recognize all around you. So Ethereum, Bitcoin, even USD could be considered a fungible token. And similar to the NFTs, you can use fungible tokens by distributing them through your community, or even just distributing them to people by airdropping them, and allocate voting power using these tokens. But in this method, you get much more granular control of voting power per individual, because an individual might have 50,000 tokens, or they might have 75,000 tokens, or they might have 88,000 tokens, and their governance power can correspond to exactly how many tokens they have, as opposed to being split one vote per person. so these fungible tokens are really useful to create a much wider range of incentives. For instance, you could distribute tokens for participating in the functioning of a DAO. Things like suggesting useful article topics, identifying top-tier articles for an education DAO, and most importantly, creating really good articles for a DAO can all be rewarded with tokens. These tokens could correspond to governance, but they can also correspond to financial rewards. And in particular, rewarding individuals who are creating the articles or creating the content or the tools that make a DAO function is really what's driving the bottom line for a DAO, creating systems that reward people for really getting engaged. So to go into a little bit, these tokens can be used to reward people. Of course, tokens have inherent financial value, so if the token accrues in value, just giving the token is worth something to the people who receive it. But you can tie it to many other things. For instance, allocated via these tokens. You could have leaderboards or reputational tools that help creators make a name for themselves and stack up against other creators by being pushed to the front or like shared more widely. You can even more powerfully, tokens, they aren't really limited just solely to members of the DAO. You can distribute DAOs tokens to people both within the DAO, but also people who are third parties who are creating fantastic content for the Web3 ecosystem, haven't necessarily heard of any particular DAO, but still would like to be rewarded for the effort that they've been putting in for free, and see some payback from all of their hard work to try to educate people involved in Web3 education. So I think after all this, you've probably started to see where we're going here. We're currently in the process of launching a DAO. Our DAO is focused entirely around Web3 education, in particular Web3 development. And in doing so, we're really hoping to prototype a new model for free online education that really focuses on the people, not the algorithms, so that we can curate and surface the best content. And so what we want to do is we want to shape Web3 development by improving the systems to teach Web3 in the first place. It's almost like a positive feedback machine. It ties back into itself. How we want to do that is we want to use some of the token systems we've already been discussing, the incentive systems, in order to leverage crypto to help us reward both fantastic participants and fantastic creators. And then on top of that, we're finalizing grants from a number of major players in the ecosystem to build a treasury to be used towards funding independent Web3 educators and funding creators around the world, regardless of whether or not they're associated with our DAO. And just really quickly to run you through some of the systems that we've been using, which correspond roughly to systems you'll see in most DAOs. One thing we're doing is building the website, which you've already seen, but we are consolidating discussion and community engagement and helping build educators' relationships with learners in our Discord. So basically using that as a hub for people who are looking to learn about Web3 development. You can go to our Discord now, ask a question, and somebody will get back to you within the next 12 hours or the next 24 hours. On top of that, we have a public forum that we've launched that basically we're going to be using for the governance of Web3 University. And so that's structures around organizing creators, that structures around planning out seasons, and that's focused on managing article proposals and topic proposals. So a lot of the inner workings of Web3U we're porting to this online platform so that anybody who's interested in it or wants to get involved can do so right now. And most importantly, we're starting to prototype some of these membership tools that we can use in order to reach with a platform like this. For instance, we're in the process of designing a tiered NFT membership system consisting of a general membership NFT. You can see it's called W3U NFTs, but we're also creating a subgroup of creator NFTs eventually who will have additional voting rights power and get more grants based on their direct involvement in terms of creating the content in the development of Web3 University. And then finally, we'll have a core team that will consist of myself and a number of my colleagues, but will eventually consist of team that is re-elected every season based on, our level of commitment for the project, or our level of participation, or our qualifications for the project, and they'll be elected from across the entire space to decentralize this project as quickly as possible. Similarly, we have some idea around how we're going to be allocating voting power and governance. We want to let the project run its course to see more clearly what the best use of these tools are. But there's plans around that been developing to make these systems work on these every season to curate articles. We're going to be awarding the NFTs based on some metric of participation in the Web3U DAO, and we're going to be setting up more and more systems so that projects will run themselves over time, as opposed to being fully driven by any particular individual in the DAO. And we're also thinking about a number of reward mechanisms in order to further push people forward in terms of engaging with the DAO and creating good content for all of Web3, not just our platform. And so one tool we're thinking about is creating a fungible token called Scholar. That token will be allocated per season, 60% for the treasury roughly, and 40% for people who own the NFTs, people who are on our Discord, people who are existing contributors. We'll be using that treasury as a bounty for participating, for people who are creating articles, and we can in particular tie these tokens directly to grant money so that we can distribute the grant money that we have to really fantastic creators, and use the tokens as a tool for a marketplace where they can be used to reward not only creators inside our organization, but also Web3 educators around the internet, right? And finally, we can use these for tools such as public leaderboards that will allow people to be recognized for their hard work and their effort involved in such a community. So we have a bunch of ideas. They're covering a lot of different spaces, but we really want to figure out how to bring these tools, not just to our project, but starting to bring these tools to all of online education, right? Our goal isn't just to make Web3 development outstanding, useful, and highly curated, but also to make all of online education similarly useful and similarly easy to pick up. So we're very early in this process, but currently we're in the prototyping stage, right? Until we tested some of these systems at scale, we really can't know what is going to stick and what is going to apply. After we start prototyping these governance models and we start getting examples of what does and doesn't work with our community, we'd like to start to look outwards a little bit by educating various communities in different topic domains on the techniques that we put into place and how they might be useful. And finally, we'd start to like to create systems that replicate these mechanisms for other projects. So we see that in probably about 5 to 10 years, there's going to be maybe a dozen projects that are similar to Web3 University following the influence of projects like ours. So we want to keep on replicating and growing these projects. Cool. And that is about the extent of my slides related to what we're doing in education with DAOs. If you want to get involved, here are the links for everything you can find related to Web3 University currently. We have a core Web3.University website. We have a forum that you can go to, and then we have the Discord that you can go to. And all of these should be pretty active, and you'll start to see a lot of what's happening behind the scenes when it comes to running Web3 University by going to our Discord or going to our forum. I think we'll take some questions now. I have a list of questions here. Thanks so much for providing them. The first one here is, for the hot topics like the metaverse, how can Web3 University get involved? And I think the question is basically, how can people who want to contribute to Web3 University engage in hot topics like the metaverse for our platform? And so the answer really is, we're already accepting submissions for our forum now. in particular related to the metaverse. This is actually the first discussion we've heard about this topic for Web3 University. So what we would do is we'd have an open conversation on the forum regarding adding a topic for the metaverse, and then starting to source articles from across the entire internet related to the metaverse that are really useful. And then if we have creators who are really excited about making content for us about the metaverse, they can get in touch with us at forum.web3 University. There is a section to submit content submissions, and we'll evaluate it, we'll talk about it, we'll work with you to polish it, and then we'll work with you to get it published on this website so more people can find out about your information. The second question is, how do you see this project is going to empower the blockchain industry as a whole? We really think the success of a project like this is going to do a few things. One, we think it's going to empower a number of growing creators to start earning money and reputation from their hard work to educate others, which is really, really, really powerful. Two, we think it's going to help prove to Web3 critics that Web3 can be super, super valuable for helping us grow existing industries, in particular, existing underserved industries like education. I think a lot of the criticisms around Web3 is that it's driven towards relatively frivolous or relatively financially driven ventures. We get a lot of criticisms around NFTs. We get a lot of criticism around proof of work. And I think projects like this are going to start showing other people that, hey, like Web3 is around to stay, and it is super, super useful for helping upend some of the assumptions that we have around a capitalistic system where we can help build projects that are useful for everybody and to help grow important things like education. And then third, we think that this project is going to really help drive the creation of similar projects around education and DAOs for a variety of different topics, not just Web3 development. And so we're hoping to be one of the starting players in a burgeoning ecosystem for free online education led by passionate people who really want to get involved and to build something bigger than themselves. The third question, can you tell us more about the plan for Web3 University in 2022? And totally, yeah. I've already talked to you about some of the incentive mechanisms that we've been designing, but very quickly, we're going to be releasing a series of seasons. Each season is going to be 2 to 4 months, and it's going to be a singular set of focuses for the DAO related to Web3 University, and also for developing the Web3 University platform for new developers as well. So Season 0, for example, is going to allow Web3 University users to become members of the DAO using that collectible NFT that we've been talking about, the W3U NFTs. One fun thing we're thinking about doing is releasing the same number of NFTs as the number of students who are currently enrolled in the Ivy League, maybe to help represent the shift from physical academia to online academia. We're going to be adding a lot of fresh content from around the web. We're going to be finalizing our content submission mechanisms, and we're going to be redesigning a lot of our intro courses that are going to serve as a launching point for the new users. And so we're going to shape those up a little bit better to really streamline people through articles focusing on NFTs, through articles focusing on DeFi, through articles focusing on DAOs. So just basically rehauling our website a little bit more to make it useful and friendly. Season 1, as far as we have in mind, is focusing around building systems for empowering the creators who are the ones creating the content. So that's going to be figuring out how we can start allocating grants for writers who are creating really thorough end-to-end courses for us. So building out the entire the meaty chunk of information that you need to educate someone about NFTs or smart contracts or Solidity. We're going to start building these in-house tools such as leaderboards that will help us keep track of our strongest creators. And we're going to start releasing NFTs particularly for creators so we can help track their voting power and we can help track their contributions to the platform. And then from there on out, past Season 1, we're thinking about designing seasons as a community as. We'll have a pretty strong base of people after 2 seasons, and we'll have a lot of inputs in terms of what direction the project will go. And so the more we decentralize it, the more great ideas we think we're going to have coming in through here. So we're pretty excited about the future. Awesome. That's about the last of the questions that I have here. It's been really fantastic having your time. Thanks for listening in. We're really excited about the potential of Web3 development. In particular, we're excited about the potential of growing Web3 development platforms beyond just English. We already have several channels focused around Chinese and Russian for our Alchemy Discord. We're hoping to do that for Web3 University pretty soon as well. And we know that so much of the potential of Web3 is going to be beyond just the US, where we're based and where most of my colleagues are based. And so any ideas you guys have around growing Web3 and Web3 development skills for other countries, China, India, much of Europe, we're absolutely excited about, and definitely let us know. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions at all. We're going to be on the Discord, and I am under Deric/Web3 University if you want to get in touch with me for any reason. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
好的，非常感谢 Deric 的精彩分享。然后在 Deric 刚才的这个分享中呢，他还有讲到，随着 Web3 和区块链世界的这个不断成熟，然后越来越多的在这个领域的关注者都开始学习构建和开发 Web3。那作为区块链的开发人员，这个人群的数量只会是越来越大，并且呈着这个爆炸式的增长哈。但是目前呢，即使是 Web3 中最久的公司也是非常年轻的，能够免费教授课程并且有经验的这种开发者其实是非常少的。那除了需求暴增和资源有限的原因以外呢，我们还面临的就是内容很碎片化，以及我们的内容价值不稳定等等原因。比如说 Deric 举例，目前就是当我们想去学习一项技能的时候，只能去网络搜索，然后就是由算法为我们匹配内容，这些内容也许就是不符合我们的意愿，而真正有价值的内容可能很难被看到。因此就创建一个整合全部相关资源，然后为希望学习构建 Web3 的开发者和建设者提供区块链领域专业和便捷的这种资源和教程的这样一个在线的教育平台是非常有价值的。那同时呢， Web3 University 也构建了一个非常庞大的社区，在 Twitter 和 Discord 上也是获得了巨大的关注，并且也在探索建立去中心化的道组织，用 NFT 或者其他的数字通证激励社区成员和更多的创作者去参与到线上的教育和内容的创作中，为所有人打开了一道可以说是为所有人都打开了一道 Web3 的这个新的入口哈。那好的，听了 Deric 的精彩分享和视频后面的作答以后呢，我们知道在2022年 Web3 University 也将继续专注于 Web3 的线上教育，不断的丰富有价值的 Web3 课程内容，通过正向的方法和声誉推动 Web3 的发展，并且会发布一系列的赛季，将继续支持不断发展的社区，激励就是专注于在 Web3 教育领域更多的参与者去构建这样一个充满未来感的去中心化的教育新范式。那让我们拭目以待。Okay, after listening to Deric wonderful sharing and the answer after the video, we know that in 2022, Web3 University will continue to focus on Web3 online education, and they are going to be releasing a series of seasons to support the growing community, inspire more participants in the fields of Web3 education, and to be one of the starting players in this ecosystem for free online education. Let's looking forward. 好的，那再次感谢 Deric 和Web3 University。在此呢，那也想和大家探讨一下，就是真的是社区治理的一种有效的方式吗？那我们现在可能都已经知道了，去中心化的道有许多好处，比如说让参与者在组织中平等的 参与决策，有更大的发言权，可以以通证治理的这种方式去激励参与者进行一个理智的投票，然后将全世界的社区更容易的连接起来，允许几乎就是任何人都可以参与到构建 Web3 的这个未来中来。那让社区的每个人都有一种主人翁的感觉啊，就是进一步推动了就是这个 Web3 的构建，然后甚至就是获得一些经济回报。当然我们也就是可以探讨一下DAO的一些值得去深思的地方，比如说它可能会降低我们的决策速度。那随着DAO的无限扩展，让每个人都及时的对社区里面的一些提案进行投票，可能是一个比较大的挑战。就比如说现实生活中有一种情况，就是需要让领导层然后迅速的做出决定，这样的情况就只有这样的情况才是最佳的治理决策，有这样的一种情况出现啊。那还有一种缺陷就是容易陷入到一种叫做自行车棚效应中。所谓的这个自行车棚效应，也就称为是帕金森琐碎的定律，就是它是指呢，我们倾向于将更多的时间去投入到一些琐碎的事情上，而忽略到重要的事情。那主要的就是复杂的事情得到的讨论就会越来越少，反而一些简单的次要的问题得到讨论就很多。那这样的情况出现，主要是因为一些复杂的问题和主要的大问题，有可能就是社区的大部分成员一开始就对这个话题了解不多，也不确定如何向其他人去做解释，而简单的这种琐碎的小事反而是因为就是大家了解，所以因为每个人都了解，就会耗费大量的时间去讨论。那虽然没有任何就是结构啊，就是可以让所有的机构或者组织去免受这样的自行车棚效应的这样一个影响，但是到这种去中心化自治组织也许就是更容易受到这个影响。那最后一点就是DAO的安全性。那我们都知道，就是DAO的参与者他很多是保持着一种匿名的状态的，这个可能是会带来额外的安全性的风险。那关于DAO的更多的探讨和思考，希望大家和我们一起去共同关注。好，再次感谢原力区朋友的陪伴。那原力区 Web3 先行者系列活动呢，后续也会继续为大家带来有趣的话题及生态资深大咖的分享。欢迎关注我们原力区的公众号，加入我们的 Telegram、Discord， 在社群里面和我们互动交流，精彩活动第一时间就知道啦。Thanks everyone, we do hope you have a great day here with us. See you next time.